If you are connected to social media for your role-playing information or ever visit DriveThruRPG, it would have been very difficult to have missed mention of Zweihander at any point in the last 2 years or so. And you can see that my shelf also has a copy of Zweihander. But if you look carefully, you'll notice that there has been a change. This was the version that used to sit there on my shelf. This is the offset press version of Zweihander from their Kickstarter run for that purpose. It is a really well put together book, solid. And people who watch my channel may remember that before we looked at the Kickstarter version, we ordered the print on demand version, a massive book, which we primarily ordered because it was so massive. Now, thanks to the rising popularity of the game, the tireless efforts of its creator, Daniel Fox, and a fortuitous partnership with Andrews McMeel Publishing, there is now a revised version of Zweihander, which means this old unboxing from October 17th, which brought us the massive, truly massive original version, and the kindly sent out review copy that Daniel Fox sent our way so we could do a comparison. That version, well, it's been replaced by this version. And I know the word replaced may seem a little harsh, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. As a backer of the companion volume for Zweihander called Mangoche, or as a Canadian, I would call it Mangoche. Maybe as someone who has no exposure to French, you'd want to call it Main Gauche. One of the add-ons was to get a revised version, offset press, of the original rules, updated to match the newer standards for layout and design that they worked out when putting that companion volume together. Now, it hasn't been released yet, and we'll be seeing it later on this year. Daniel Fox was kind enough to send me my add-on copy of the revised core rulebook early so that I could do this overview and, in a sense, do a comparison. Although, frankly, now there is no comparison. But going back in time to the rapturous moments of unwrapping all of this bubble wrap, the new version, the first thing that struck me as I cleared away all this plastic was how dramatically improved the color and clarity are. So allow me to share this first moment. We see that the back cover has been completely redesigned. There's a lot more text here now, and of course, more awards and the new distributor. But there are so many little details, which I've come to expect from Grim Perilous Studios. The reading ribbon is now extra wide, which saves wear and tear on the pages and makes it a lot easier to manipulate. The book itself is actually heavier. It's far more dense. I was very pleased to find inside the front cover of mine a personal message from Daniel Fox where he thanked me for my interest in the game over these last couple of years and his hope that I found it to be an improvement. Well, we're about to demonstrate how much of an improvement it is. Not only the bright red end papers, which set off the book so nicely, but just everything. We've seen in the Game Master screen the attention to detail in that it's set for people with color blindness. And with that same attention to detail, we find that now Zweihander, which had been a purely black and white product, has now added in a nice neutral color to set off sidebars and other things without getting into watermarking or putting other obstructions between you and the text. So if, I guess, there's one negative to say, is that throughout this massive book, the text is quite small. So if you've drifted into the time period where you're now using reading glasses, or if your vision always required them, that may be a challenge. Of course, it's a challenge that can be completely obviated by using the PDF. But as you can see, going through here, we have this nice sepia color to set off sidebar text. It's used in charts. It's used for the page numbers, for bullet points, and just adds something throughout. So we have these fine glossy pages, very, very heavy pages. There's no transfer of image from one side of the page to the other. The blacks are black, the grays are grays, the whites are white, and the sepia is sepia. And it really is a step up even from the Kickstarter version from before. This was a nice surprise tucked into my copy, the bookmarks given away at Origins to advertise what's coming. So tucked into the sellsword page, the sellsword. It's these little details that make all of this so much fun, and I really appreciate the thought. So they've improved legibility. They've improved the layout. Things use far less space and are far easier to find. The book, still massive, has managed to shed a few pages without actually shedding any content. There is some new art in here to find, and errata fixes, not to mention more and better proofreading. So this version of Zweihander is head and shoulders above previous editions. Now, you're thinking to yourself, this type of spine is supposed to just lie flat without any misbehaving. Well, it's not technically misbehaving. Remember that bookmark? This is what's causing that spreading of the pages when we take it out. So too does that problem go. And I'll be keeping the bookmark here between the color plates in the precise middle of the book. This is the cover used in the variant option from the Kickstarter, which we've seen before. So here are all three books together on the shelf just for fun. You can see the immensity of print on demand still hasn't been able to reach the efficiency or economy of size of an offset press version, but let's go a little deeper into comparing these different editions. So we're going to start with the Kickstarter edition. We've already shown this imagery before, but it bears repeating how the quality of page, the thickness of page, and the binding process have a direct impact on your experience holding the book or trying to shelve it. This is at least another standard size role-playing book of difference. So if your shelves are as full as mine, that matters. So here are the three books together. I think the first thing that we'll notice is that the Kickstarter version and the new revised version have a matte finish. The print-on-demand version obviously has a glossy cover. It's also significantly darker. That tends to make it look a little bit more visually striking on video, but it actually represents a significant loss in detail. And we're going to look at that more in a bit. Now, the Kickstarter versions are gone. The print-on-demand versions are gone. Zweihander is now available in an awful lot of places, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So we're only going to be having this revised copy and its revised quality moving forward in time, unless you pick up earlier versions used. And I think it's important to know what to expect when you do that. That means on the surface, the Kickstarter edition and the new revised edition have a lot in common: matte finish, reading bookmarks, and glossy pages. The print-on-demand version had a glossy cover and typical matte pages, with a little bit of bleed through from one side to the other, although the page quality was quite good. There is also the issue of the binding. If you handle it well, it'll survive. If you don't, it won't. Now, what are we doing here? We're zooming in on the print-on-demand cover. You can see a lot of work was done to try and make Zweihander really pop out of that dark cover. And it was fairly successful. But overall, the level of detail in this representation of the image is significantly less than that we find on the other traditionally printed versions. Here we see the eye color is basically gray. We can vaguely see that there's a lighter ring around it. This is the new edition. We'll see that there's a drop shadow, which really brings the word out as intended. And as we go in, we can see that more tweaks were made to emphasize and support, dramatize all the different color things that are going on. The flame motif of Zweihander, right down to smoke coming off of it. This may seem like a minor detail, but at a distance, it's very noticeable to the naked eye. Remember, we talked about the eye a moment ago. Well, let's take a look at our hard-bitten face and see what color his eyes actually are. They're not gray. They're not some kind of washed-out black or some forgotten detail. They are, in fact, blue. And there's an awful lot of other interesting detail on his face, which is now apparent in this good transfer of the image onto the cover of the book. So, what else can we expect? This is the inside of the Kickstarter version, which, as you remember, is not only thinner, it's also shorter than the print-on-demand version. So take a look at the bottom of that sidebar with the scroll design. See how close it comes to the border on the page. As we have talked about before, the pages are glossy. They're a nice thick page, and there's a nice reading ribbon there to track your progress through the tome. We're going to look at page 307 because this is the page that the book opened to for some reason. And we're looking at the spell Coruscating Mantle and Cleansing Light. Pretty cool looking page. This is the print-on-demand version. They had more space, and more space was used. Now there's a lot more white space everywhere, and in some cases that's a better fit. In other cases it looks like there's just too much space. This is page 307. You'll notice that the quality of print, while good, does have a tendency to look a little pixelated. While some readers may prefer to not have glossy pages for ease of reading, the page quality here isn't quite the same as what we have in a traditionally printed book. Still really good, but this is the revised version. You'll notice right off the bat, I think, that the art has changed and that the overall layout of the page and general legibility has improved. Now, this is page 306, not 307. So as we're working our way through the book, the space savings are beginning to be noticeable. Also, the ease of being able to go through the tables due to the different color and the better application of font and font size to the space makes all of this a lot quicker and easier to read. Okay. So that really brings us to the end of the coverage of the book and comparison to the previous, now defunct editions of it. Moving forward, it will only be this version that's available, and it's available everywhere. You can order it on Amazon or wherever you like. So I guess it's time to talk about that a little bit. With the move to Andrews McMeel Publishing, Zweihander can now be sold in a lot more places with a distribution agreement which puts them in places like Walmart and Target and Barnes & Noble, bookstores and the like, rather than relying on print-on-demand for international orders and the friendly local game store for local orders. While of course you can still get it there, or direct from Grim Perilous Gaming, this is their website. The wider reach and accessibility to people who have not yet gotten into the hobby may be a benefit. It certainly is if, like me, you live in some place that's either so remote or so tiny or so international that there are no friendly local game stores. Now, we used that word replace before. Of course, it doesn't replace your existing copy of Zweihander. It does, however, update it. So if you have an earlier version and you are either not ready or not interested in getting a new revised version, errata is free to bridge the gap. It's available on DriveThru RPG, where the PDF will remain available. The errata document brings the rules fully in line with the new revised version. So you can print them out and tuck them into your existing rules until you've got them memorized, or leave them there in case you play Zweihander infrequently. So that brings this to an end. Here is Zweihander sitting comfortably on the shelf, waiting to spring into action. And spring indeed it is going to. There are lots of plans afoot, from feudal samurai series to a grim and perilous version of colonial Gothic. There's lots in store for Zweihander.